Around a week ago, I posted the best legends to be playing in Apex Legends Ranked in Season 12. You guys seem to really enjoy that video, so today I have the exact same video but about the weapons. Today I bring you the best ranked weapons to be using in Apex Legends Season 12. Hey, how's it going? I hope you're having a fantastic day and welcome back to the channel. As I said, we're going over the best weapons to be using in Apex Legends Ranked in this season. If you've never seen a tier list before, I will have a playlist in the description down below of all of my tier lists I've made before. But basically, we start off at D tier and work our way up to S tier, D tier being the worst and S being the best. Just before we get into today's video, make sure you go down below and subscribe. And guys, so much for 1.2k subs. We're very quickly approaching 1.3 now. And once you're down there, you might as well join the community Discord, which will be in my pinned comment down below. Don't forget this video also has chapters, so you can skip to each tier to see where your favourite weapon is. But as I'd say with all of my tier list, these are my opinion. Some weapons that may work better for me may not work better for you. Some weapons that work better for you may not work better for me. It's all about our playstyle and our personal opinion. So please don't spread negativity in the comments down below. So with all of that out of the way, starting us off in D tier will be the P2020 and the Mozambique. Now if you've never seen one of my tier lists before, every single time when we start off with these weapons, I always go over the fact that they are the starter weapons. These weapons are used to be using off drop and not supposed to be used for late game. These weapons are meant to be rotated out. You're meant to land on these weapons, and once you find better weapons, you can swap them out. These weapons are here to keep the meta balanced, but when it comes to actual gameplay, these weapons are not good. Yes, if you add the hammer point rounds, they become a little bit better, especially the Mozambique can actually become a very reliable weapon, but as their base weapon, they are not good and they're not meant to be good. So these two weapons will always be down in D tier. Just to recap, these weapons are meant to be used off spawn and rotated out once you find better loot. So moving us up to C tier now, we have the L-Star, the RE45, the Sentinel, the Charge Rifle, the Devotion, and finally the 30-30 repeater. The L-Star is a pretty decent weapon, especially have something like a 3x on it, but for me it just isn't it. One of the main reasons for this is because of the cooldown on the L-Star. The L-Star is the only weapon in the game which actually has infinite shots and you don't have to reload, but you have to be wary of the cooldown on it. This for me is a massive downside as you have to keep bursting the weapon, kind of feathering out the bullets out so you don't overheat your weapon. Especially when you get into higher ranks, the L-Star just isn't it, and there's a lot more weapons which you should be choosing over it. Next up is the RE45. This is kinda like the P2020 and the Mozambique, except it's just a little bit better. If you have hammer points on this, again it's going to be absolutely insane, but as a base weapon, it's just alright. Now some people do actually prefer this to some SMGs, and I kinda see why they like that. But when you're in ranked, you want something with more reliability, you want something that can deal more damage, use at more of a distance, you want something that you can use at multi-range, whether that's long range, medium range, close range. And that just isn't possible with the RE45. The RE45 can only really be used up close. If you're using something up close, then you might as well be using something like a shotgun rather than a pistol. The Sentinel for me is actually quite high C tier, and that's because of the charged up version of the Sentinel where you put 2 cells in, you charge up the Sentinel and you can break people's shields with it. This is really good, but for me this is the only thing that is really positive about the Sentinel. There are a couple more snipers which are, in my opinion, better than the Sentinel. I know this is actually quite controversial. The Sentinel is actually a very well loved weapon by the community, but for me I'd just rather be using something, well, something that we'll talk about a little bit later on in the video. But as well as the Sentinel down here, we also have the Charge Rifle. And when you're playing ranked, you want something that's going to be a little bit more quiet and doesn't drain through your bullets. The rifle is insanely loud, and every time you shoot it, you inform other teams around you of your positioning. You are practically telling other teams where you are, and most importantly, what weapon you have. If someone knows you have the Charge Rifle, they're just not going to peek you when you're playing ranked. The Charge Rifle is a pretty decent weapon to be playing in a game mode like pubs, where if you're just going for damage or something like that. But in ranked, especially at higher levels of ranked, I don't think it's that viable. It's more annoying than good. Half the time when I'm being charge rifled, I'm getting tickled for 2-3 damage at a time. It's pretty rare where someone gets a full beam on me and actually cracks me. So yeah, I feel like the charge rifle in ranked is more of an annoying weapon to be using and to be more importantly playing against. So there are a couple other snipers which I actually think are better than this. The Devo, when you're playing ranked, you need a weapon which has more alertness around it. And that's because of the charge up time on the devotion. Instead, you want something with a little bit more alertness to it. If you find a turbocharger, this is a totally different matter, but on this occasion, we're talking about actual base weapons. As a base weapon, you want something that can shoot a lot more quicker. As I've already said a million times now, something with a little bit more alertness to it. Devo just takes a little bit too long to charge up and too long to deal a lot of damage. It all depends on the scenario. If someone doesn't have shield, then using the devotion is absolutely fine. But if you're going against someone with red, then, you know, you just want something that's going to shoot a little bit quicker, have more alertness to it, and so not just left standing in the middle of the battlefield waiting for your weapon to ramp up. 30-30 is good for getting rid of the enemy's sort of supplies. It's very good at pot-shotting the enemy, making them waste their shield, especially with attachments, something like a 3x, something like that, or a 2-4. This weapon can be really good for making people waste their meds. Leading on from the devotion, it kind of has the same problem as you have to wait a second or so for the full damage potential. The longer you ADS, the more damage you've got to do. Obviously, that's capped at a couple seconds. And as I said before, on a couple more weapons, there are a couple of weapons above in higher tiers, which do this job a little bit better, which we'll get onto right now. Starting us off in B tier will be the Eva 8, the longbow, the triple take, the havoc, the car, and finally the bow. Now the weapon which I was referring to will be the longbow. I believe the longbow is better at taking pot shots and making the enemy waste their meds better than the 30-30 repeater. This goes with the triple take too. Both of these weapons I believe are better than the 30-30 repeater. Especially the triple take, as it can be used at multiple ranges. Could be used at very long range, medium range, and we all know that the triple take can be classed as the best shotgun in the game. Now one thing which I always get a little bit of backlash for is hating on the Eva 8. Now if you've seen a couple of my past tier lists, I would have said this video on screen now, I test all of the shotguns to find out which one is the best. And as a quick summary, the Eva 8 did okay, but there are other shotguns just did better than it. And other shotguns are in higher tiers, and so I can't put the Eva 8 with them as it just doesn't compare. Car SMG is also up here because, especially in ranked, you need to be focusing on more of your inventory space, and the fact that you can change ammo type is absolutely huge for this. If you don't know, and I have mentioned a couple times before in past videos, that light ammo is the most common ammo in the game. It can be really helpful knowledge when using the car, as obviously as its base weapon is a heavy ammo weapon. But sometimes you may be struggling to find a lot of it, so if you change it to light ammo, then you have a lot more ammo at your disposal. Especially if you're running it with another light ammo weapon, you might as well change the car's weapon ammo type to light ammo so you have more inventory space. You can just carry around one ammo type rather than two. On the same subject as ammo types, the bow check is here, as I believe again is better than the 30-30 repeater, and that's because when you shoot your arrows, if you kill the person with your arrows, you could just retrieve them back in their death box. Having a constant supply of ammo is absolutely vital in ranked. You always want to be high on ammo rather than low. You want to be able to take in every shot that you can, especially towards the late games to get the most KP. Yeah, as well as that, if you miss your arrow shots, you can just pick them off the ground. You have a constant supply of ammo when you're using the bow check, and that for me makes it better at pot shotting and making people waste their meds more than the 30-30 repeater. Now the Havoc is also in B tier, and that's because for me it's better than the Devotion. It has a little bit quicker of a charge up time, coil can be relatively easy to control once you learn it, and it can be used at various different ranges. The only downside to the Havoc is the energy ammo is the hardest ammo to find. It's the rarest ammo type in the game. So if you're running something like a Havoc as your AR, you need to be wary of how much ammo you are actually wasting, as not many people will be carrying it. you'll need to find it in loot bins or just as ground loot, because you're not going to find it anywhere else unless you craft it. That's about it for B tier. So moving up now to A tier, these are some of the best weapons to be using in Apex Legends Season 12 Ranked, and these are the Peacekeeper, the R99, the Wingman, the Alternator, the Prowler, the Flatline, and finally the Hemlock Burst. Now let's quickly talk about the Peacekeeper. The Peacekeeper got a brand new hop-up called the Kinetic Feeder, and this allows for automatic reload when you slide, as well as this when you slide the chokeut time is actually reduced. So hitting them powerful shots much quicker, and they are much easier to hit and happen more frequently too. This weapon is absolutely bumped up because of this hop-up. It's slowly becoming one of my favourite weapons to use in the game. The only thing I would have caution about when using the Peacekeeper is you have to be confident in knowing that you're going to hit your shots. If you're not, then you're going to be at a massive disadvantage. So if you don't have confidence in yourself to be using the Peacekeeper, then in my opinion, simply don't. It's going to be your best interest to be using a weapon that you're more comfortable with and knowing you're going to be hitting your shots with. The R99 is simply an absolute beast and has been ever since the game first came out, and this is for a couple reasons. The recoil control is very easy to use and adapt to, has a really good mag size and a really good DPS. All of these things makes this weapon absolutely insane, an absolute beam on the battlefield. So this is one of the big reasons why you should be using the R99 within your ranked games. The weapon can be used at a medium to close range. For me, it works better at a more close range, and it has a pretty decent hip fire too. The Wingman has the same problem with the Peacekeeper, that you have to be confident in knowing you're going to be hitting your shots when using this weapon. Mag size is actually on the lower side, obviously because it's a pistol and won't be able to have as much ammo as, let's say, an AR. So you really need to be cautious on actually hitting your shots. Again, with the Peacekeeper, if you don't believe you're going to be hitting your shots and not as confident in yourself to be hitting almost all of your shots, then simply just pick up another weapon. You don't want to be putting yourself at a disadvantage, so you might as well use weapons that you're more comfortable and knowing you're going to be using better with. The Alternator is obviously technically the new weapon of the season, as it came out of the care package rotation. The weapon is actually excelling a lot more than I actually thought it would do. For me, it is really good to be using as an actual primary weapon. You can use this SMG as a primary weapon and have like a shotgun as your secondary, rather than using, let's say, an R301 as your primary and using an Alternator as your secondary. Recoil control is actually relatively easy to master. Mag size is really good, but the DPS is on the lower side. Fire rate is a lot slower too compared to like the R99, so you have a little bit more time to adjust and actually hit your shots. If you're not as comfortable as using, let's say, a Wingman, then I would use something like an Alternator. What I've just said applies exactly the same to the Prowler. The only thing different about the Prowler is that it's a burst, so you have to be conscious of the fact it's not going to have a constant fire rate. And the recoil is obviously going to be a little bit different, as obviously the recoil will only happen during every burst. Flatline is obviously within the new crafting rotation, but talking as actual the base weapon of the Flatline, it's really good. It is the second best MG in the game, and that's a fact now, because it had a 1 damage nerf, and because of that, the R301 is actually placed a lot higher than that now. But if you're comfortable with using the Flatline and you used it a lot before you went into crafting rotation, there's no harm in spending a couple crafting mats to craft this weapon and be using it. This weapon is known for its absolutely insane hip fire. It was actually used to be known as actual a SMG, as up close and a hip fire is an absolute beam. So if you're comfortable within using the Flatline, you might as well craft it. Just be wary that it does a little bit less damage than the R301 now, and that you actually have to buy the weapon to be using it. You can't find it in floor loot or anyone else. The Hemlock is also a burst like the Prowler, so that's one thing you have to be conscious of when using it. But apart from that, this weapon can be an absolute beam. As well as the single fire mode is actually one of my favourite modes to be using on this weapon. But there is a weapon which is a little bit better than this, and we get into this right now. Moving up to S tier, we have the Rampage, the R301, and finally the Mastiff. I know the Rampage always gets a lot of clashback, obviously because a lot of people just want the weapon straight up removed. But if we're talking about ranked and we actually want you guys to rank up, then you got to think about it that the game is the game. You got to be using what is the best in the game so you can rank up quicker and much easier. This LMG is actually one of the best weapons within the game, if not the best weapon in the game. The mag size is absolutely insane, the damage insane, and it also has a relatively slower fire rate, so you could adjust your shots so you will be hitting most of them. Not only that, the thermite allowed it to be ramped up is absolutely insane too. The fact that it can destroy doors is absolutely mind-blowing. The R301 is also up here, as it's now better than the flatline. It is also a light ammo weapon, so it's the easiest ammo to be finding. As well as that, it has a really good easy recoil, really good fire rate, really good DPS too. So everything about this weapon is outstanding and you should be using it. Now, straight up after this, we have the Mastiff. Mastiff for me is placed a little bit above the Peacekeeper, and that's because it is basically just an easier Peacekeeper. It has more shots and the pellet spread is much bigger, so it's easier to hit your shots and you have a lot more chances to be hitting your shots too. Thank you guys so much for watching to the end of the video. That's going to call it for today. If you found this video helpful and or entertaining in any way, shape or form, then make sure to go down below and leave it a like. Whilst you're down there, you might as well subscribe so you can be entered into the next subscriber shout out. Once you've done that, make sure you scroll down into the comments and click on my pinned comment and join the community Discord. So, as always, it's been my pleasure. Thank you guys so much for support recently, and until next time, keep dominating Legends.
Sniper stock here, level 3.
Recharging my shields, Dazzy. Enemy here.
Really close. Taking fire. Oh, I'm down.
Being shot at. That squad's dead as. We made them unrecognizable. I ain't letting you die. Not till we've won. I got them on mate. Our whole squad ain't in the ring. Watching my shields, cuzzies.
Final round. Beginning.
Chucking an up, star. Give us a sec. Recharging my shields.
45 seconds till ring close, amigos. Don't let me carry you.
Gonna be inside. Break that egg shield. Reloading.
Burning 24 flash as well.
Brings near it and work close to kill.
GG's.
Good job, guys.
Well played, well played.